prophecies, revelations, economic collapse, martial law, social and civil war, aliens, human hybrids, Nephilim, the Great Deception, world chaos, tsunamis. You want to stay tuned for special edition End Time Revelations with Pastor Henry Schaefer and Pastor Steve Hall.
Well, hello and welcome. My name is Henry Schaefer. Welcome to another episode of special edition of End Time Prophecies. And I'm here in the studio, and I have the host of the program as well, Steve Hall. He's in the program here with me. Steve.
I'm excited to be back. I tell you what, been doing some research on this. We've got some information we're going to let some other people give right here off of the computer in a minute. But we're going to talk about the financial crash that's coming to America. If you know anything about the stock market, if you haven't had your head in the sand all month long, you know things are happening.
Yeah, it's happening all around us, aren't they? And if you turn on, I like to watch Fox News, and there's a lot of different programs that are out there, so I don't slight one or the other, but I kind of hang in there with Fox News and look at their financial channel.
Yes.
It doesn't look good, what's taking place in America right now. And especially when we say this here, talking about coming off a blood moon.
Yeah.
And talking about how that ended the Shemitah year, and then where everything is wiped back to zero. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And this is what's happening. It's like a 7-year cycle. The financial people understand this, and now it's actually happening. And tell us what the worst start.
Yeah, this is the worst start. January is the worst start in history of the stock market in America. The worst economic start we've ever had in the history of the stock market. That puts a red flag up in my mind.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And coupled with what we're going to teach in just a moment, people ought to be thinking, well, I probably need to get me some water. I need to get me some stuff stored up food-wise, some gas, everything that you need on a daily basis, you need a supply of.
Exactly.
Your private supply.
Yeah, I told my wife, I said, listen, they're calling for snow.
Yeah.
Maybe in this area. I said, you need to go ahead and stock up on some more stuff. Like, what are you talking about? Like some more stuff. We just need to make sure that we have some stuff like around the house just in case we can't get out. But, we've been telling people that.
For over a year now.
Yeah.
Well over a year.
To get ready what's taking place. Because God doesn't want his people caught unawares. I'm not trying to fear monger either.
Oh, no, I'm not either.
Just trying to let people understand. Now, last week when we talked about the program, we talked about the end time prophecies or the revelations that God's given. And we talked about, okay, what are some of the things that could set up to where we're talking about the 2016 election?
Yes.
It not happening. Martial law,
yeah.
All those kind of things happening. And just how to put people into perspective is that there's something's going to happen if the revelation and the prophecies that God's given to his people about martial law, 2016 elections not happening,
yes.
the president taking on another term, which he could do. And so we're trying to say, okay, if this is going to happen, how will it play out?
That's right. What's the scenarios that set it up? And we are looking and going back today because we kind of ended that last
with different scenarios. One was Charleston striking a bomb or something,
Yeah, we had that. And today we're going to pick it up on one of those scenarios, which is economic judgment, economic catastrophe. And along with the Shemitah year that we talked about,
right.
You're in the year of Jubilee, which was when all of the slaves went back home.
Yep.
All of the Jewish slaves were released from their bondage. It was once every 50 years, and they went back to their homeland that was given to them and divided to them by lot by Joshua. All the way back, they got their farms. Listen, parents got their children back. Children got their homes back. Everything went back together, and the economic situation was leveled back out. Everybody started back at the same place, which is wonderful. We've never done that in America, so God's going to do it for us.
Yeah.
And it's the year that it would be happening right now, praise God.
It is amazing what's taking place.
It is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And we found an economic indicator that's called the Baltic Index.
Yes.
And the Baltic Index, from what I understand, Brother Schaefer, is how much it costs them to move freight across the Atlantic either way, from our side of what would be our East Coast across the Atlantic, or if it's from Europe's side across the Atlantic. And the cost is so low right now that they can't make money hauling freight, shipping freight, literally shipping across the ocean. They can't make any money. And so we're not the only ones that's on to this. Since I've been researching this, there's a lot of other economic specialists that are using this index and saying this is dead wrong. We are in a bad situation. No merchandise is moving across the Atlantic.
So what you're telling me is that there's no merchandise moving. There is an indicator that is called the Baltic Economic Indicator.
Economic indicator.
Yeah, it's where they know stuff.
Well, they know where the ships are.
Yeah, and
they
nothing's
track
moving.
each ship, and the ships are in the harbors, are anchored right outside of the harbors, and we're talking about huge cargo ships. I have been in Charleston fishing when these ships come into the Charleston port. Let me tell you, they're as big as cities.
Yeah,
they're so big you got to see one in person to believe it.
How big it is.
Yes, it's phenomenally big. Seeing the pictures on TV, when you get out there in your little boat and you look at this thing coming by, oh, it's a different world.
Yeah.
And these things are so huge, and the cost to operate them is so huge. And not only that, but listen to this, the people who own the boats are going bankrupt because they're not making enough money. And that means the mortgage that they had on the boat, and you're talking $1 billion boat, the mortgage that they had on the boat is going back to the bank. And the banks don't need a boat.
That's
they
right.
can't sell $1 billion boat.
So I don't know where we're going to plug this in at, so that we know that in America things, things have been put out on the news. Certain stores closing.
Well, Walmart.
Okay.
McDonald's by the hundreds.
Right. I saw that on the news where they were talking about closing hundreds of Walmarts and losing thousands of jobs.
When Walmart starts closing, something ain't moving.
That's right. Well, let's just talk about the gas just for a moment. I mean, I don't know what our gas is around here, $1.40, $1.50 a gallon.
Yeah.
But I said, I don't know if I was telling it on the last program, but I was speaking to someone, 99 cents a gallon. I seen it on TV.
It's coming and cheaper. I heard it was 47 cents up north.
But what's getting ready to happen is that with Iran being able to start to flood their market,
yes,
now with the release their economic goods out on the market now, this is going to drive the oil prices down. But you know what's really happening? They're trying, even Saudi Arabia and all of them are driving down the price of gas so low that where we frack here in America and where we produce our own
won't
energy,
happen.
well, we go out of business.
Right.
It's so they can't make no money. So they're just driving. They said, it's okay. We got plenty of oil. They just keep driving it down till everybody shuts down and everybody's out of business and we have no competition. Then they can raise the prices up to $5 a gallon.
But that's a good scenario for them, though. I mean, they have lived without selling their oil all these years since the embargo. Now they know they already scheduled them. They can make it through it.
Yeah.
But when they flood the market, like you said, they're going to crash some of our systems. And what that's going to do is further hurt American economy.
Right.
And the American economy, I don't care what the president said on TV, the American economy is crippled and about to fall and not get back up.
Right.
Because we are under economic judgment.
Let's do this here. You want to run that video of the economic, the Baltic one?
Yeah, put that Baltic video in, and our listeners could actually watch it if they come on to our. How would you get them there, brother? That would be.
They can go to Ustream and type in WUCC on Ustream, and they get on their smartphone or their tablet, and they can watch this here as we watch it as
and
well.
Listen.
Yeah, so let me see if I can get this up here for us, and I'll get it full screen for us. The economic collapse is, here's what it's titled. If you go to YouTube, you can do it this as well. The economic collapse is here. Ships have halted their sails. Let's see if we can run this here real quick.
Truth Unveiled here, and today I have a lot to share with you, so I want to get right into it. And as a warning, I just hope all of you are starting to stock up on food, weapons, ammo, and drinks, especially water, because the economic collapse is here, and I'm going to show you how. Today I'm going to be talking about the Baltic Dry Index, or the BDI, and how this has to do with your food and drinks in stores, and how it could affect the ensuing economy. And remember, we are to be wise as serpents, just like Joseph and how they prepared for the 7-year famine before it actually happened. We are to prepare before the economic collapse and make sure our families and ourselves have enough food and enough resources so that when tragedy does strike, we are ready.
Now, you know, some
So I'm
people don't
here
believe
at
you should prepare.
zerohedge.com, and I'm going to share a little bit of this, but I thought it was interesting. It says, nothing is moving. Baltic Dry crashes as insiders warn commerce has come to a halt. The continued collapse
And
of the
that's
Baltic
dated
Dry
the
Index,
11th
and I'll show
of
you that stock later
January,
on in the video,
2016.
remains
2016.
So it's very
ignored by
current.
most. Besides, we still have Netflix, right? But as dollar vigilantes Jeff Berwick details, it appears the worldwide real economy has ground to a halt. Last week, I received news from a contact who is friends with one of the biggest billionaire shipping families in the world. Now, listen to this. He told me they had no ships at sea right now because operating them meant running at a loss. This weekend alone, reports are circulating saying much the same thing. The North Atlantic has little or no cargo ships traveling in its waters. Instead, they are anchored, unmoving, and get this, empty.
Wow.
So what does
That's
that tell
terrible.
us? If these ships are not moving, if these cargo ships are empty, if there's nothing in them, how do you expect to get food? How will food be delivered to the grocery stores? Are you starting to see how things are adding up? We looked at the Dow today, and the Dow dropped another 364 points today or so. And actually, I can take you to an article with the Dow and just how much it's collapsing, and same with the Chinese market. But what I'm telling you is, and just like I said in my bailouts video, when the collapse gets here, it's going to get here. It's going to strike like a thief in the night, honestly. You're not going to even know it and expect it. And like I said, what that means is if there are no ships coming in, that means that no one's going to be able to get their food. Grocery stores aren't going to be able to stock up. The grocery stores are going to shut down. The shutdown has already begun. And this gives a map of the ships and where they mostly are. And it just looks like it's been a stop movement. And here's the graph of the Baltic Dry Index and how it looks. As you can see, towards 2016, it's at the lowest that it's been since ever. And I'll show you a better graph too. And I'm also here at this website, superstation95.com. It says, historic first, North Atlantic empty of cargo ships in transit, all anchored along coasts.
Wow, look at them, bro.
Moving.
That's
There's a
crazy.
bunch of them in
Why
there.
do you think that
Never
is?
happened
Why
before.
are they no longer moving the ships? I wonder why. And it says, commerce between Europe and North America has literally come to a halt. For the first time in known history, not one cargo ship is in transit in the North Atlantic between Europe and North America. All of them, hundreds, are either anchored offshore or in part. Nothing is moving. Let me highlight that. Nothing is moving. This has never happened before. It is a horrific economic sign, proof that commerce is literally stopped. And why has commerce stopped? They say people aren't buying things, blah blah blah. There's not enough, things to buy and stuff like that. Tumbling dollar, economic collapse imminent. Why am I telling you this? Why am I warning you this? Because think about it this way. If the ships have stopped coming in, if they stop moving between Europe and North America, what does that tell you? No one's going to be getting their goods. That means there will be no food being shipped in, which also means when you go to the store one day, there's going to be no food there because that store did not receive any shipments of food. And you don't want to be one of those people who go to the store one day and there's no food left because everybody bought it all out.
Get
But
your
that's
peanut butter.
exactly what's happening. The economic
Bread and
collapse
jelly.
is basically here, and people have been brainwashed
Spam
and
in a
conditioned
can.
into thinking that everything's okay. I
Anything
don't know
that'll
if you
last
all
a
saw the
long
State
time.
of the Union, Obama's so-called last State of the Union, when we know darn well that will not be his last State of the Union. But I just want to address what he was talking about with the economy being well and the economy being okay, and that everybody who's talking about economic collapse is crazy. Well, according to stock markets and according to evidence and according to research done by so-called expert economists, the economy is far from okay, and it's right at the brink of a collapse that we have not seen since 2008 and even since 1929, the Great Depression. We are there, folks, and it's only going to get worse from here. And I'm showing you this so that you can prepare ahead of time and not be one of those people who are stuck
Prepare
scrambling
now.
for
Don't wait.
crumbs.
Right.
Don't wait till it's gone,
Okay,
y'all.
so now
Go
we
to
are
the
at
grocery store,
the
get you some
index,
food,
and
get
as
you
you
some
can see,
extra
the
gas.
Baltic Dry Index, it
Don't
dropped another
wait.
394 points today, or about close to 2%. Now, if I go to the 5-year mark, you'll see here
Wow.
that it's right here as of today.
Lowest it's
Never
ever
been
been.
this
And
low.
as you can
5
Never.
years.
see,
We're
it's
looking at the
the
graph here in the
lowest.
studio,
This
y'all. So if
index
you're on
here
the
that
page with
manages
us,
all
you
the
could see it.
cargo ships, it's at the lowest
It's never happened
history.
before.
Never has it
So I
been
don't care
this
what
low.
anybody else is
But
saying.
now
These
it
people
is,
on
and people still think that the economy is
Channel
okay.
12, Channel 6, and
The
Fox News,
1-year return says
they
it dropped
are
almost
paid
50%.
to not tell exactly
That's
how
a
bad it
big
is.
drop, folks. Like, this is no joke. And now my final place I'm going to show you before I show you the stock market is Dave Hodges, The Common Sense Show. Now, if you have not heard of him, I highly recommend you visit his website because he gives a lot of good information about insider knowledge, martial law, the economy, the coming economic collapse, and everything else. I highly recommend you check him out. He says, and he posted this today, food and
It's the
medicine will
13th
soon be
of
unobtainable.
January 2016.
If product is not moving, just as we saw, the ships have been stopped, they're not moving, just as I've shown you, then how will you get your food, medicine, and other essential supplies? And that's the question for today. Farmed economists John Williams from Shadow Stats and Joseph Meyer Straight Money Analysis will tell you that the Baltic Dry Index, or the BDI, is the best indicator of the economic health of the economy. If that's the case, and economists are saying this, professional economists, and I just showed you the BDIY, or the Baltic Dry Index, and I showed you that in the past 5 years it's at its lowest, what does that tell you? That tells you that the economy is about to plop, go down the drain. It's even at the door. So then he goes on to write, unfortunately, the BDI has just dropped another 3.1% to a new record low of 402. To anyone who knows anything about economics, it is clear that the end of this financial era is quickly coming to an end, and I have to argue it is already at the end. The MSM conspires to keep the truth from the people, or as he likes to call it, the mainstream media. So you have your
Mainstream media.
CNNs, your Foxes, all of them are
Brother, they're
totally
not doing
ignoring
what
the
we're doing right
precipitous
now
and
to help the
unprecedented drop
people
in
be
the
prepared.
BDI
Right.
and in the Dow Jones and other places. However, the impending financial crisis is not going unnoticed by those who manage the shipping industry. They recognize this as the total disaster that it is. For example, total orders at the shipyards in China have dropped off by a nearly 60%
Said
in
I
the
was gonna
first
talk
11
about China.
months of last
Yeah.
year, according
60%.
to Bloomberg. So what is the mainstream media doing? What is their agenda? They are trying to soften you and condition your mind into thinking that everything's okay, that you don't have to stockpile food, you don't have to get anything ready, you don't have to prepare, that the economy's okay, that it's going to get better and everything's going to be okay in Obama's so-called last year of office, when we know better, because the stock markets, like this one, seem to say otherwise. And he goes on to say,
Yeah, listen at this. This is great right here.
that in Obama's last, or so-called last, State of the Union address, he failed to mention that he will not be leaving office anytime soon, because we know he's going to stay in office. The coming catastrophe will soon allow him to stay on as president in order to manage the present crisis and to, of course, save the American people, or as I like to call it, slave the American people, just as he's been doing. So he then goes on to talk about the economy and its standstill and what's been happening. So he says, as shipping and manufacturing continue to crumble, we're going to see shortages in America that we have never seen. And like I said, you're going to start seeing stores no longer being able to stock up on food. You're going to start seeing stores and grocery stores and markets. They're going to say, oh, sorry, we don't have any food. We haven't received a shipment today. Come back later. When you start to hear that, the alarm bell should be ringing in your head.
Oh, you hear what she said when they come back? Come back.
That tells you, and just as I've shown you in these articles, they're not going to be shipping food here anymore. Then he talks about Michael Schneider and what he's been talking about, and we'll go to his article too.
$26 a barrel, the gallon she was talking
He even
about.
says it's like the Monday before Black Tuesday in 1929, and that's what it is. There's so many warnings, so many alarm bells ringing, but people continue to go through life as if nothing is wrong. Logic means nothing to the sheep of America. Proof means nothing to these people, even scriptures from Revelation. So you can keep telling people, but some people will still think that everything's okay.
Having
People
ears
will
to
just
hear,
think that
they
you're
will not hear,
fear-mongering, as he
brother.
says.
Right.
Fear-mongering, like the term conspiracy theorist, was created by the mainstream media in order to marginalize any individual who has serious concerns about the elite and their intentions regarding the direction that the planet, or the plane, the flat earth, is headed. See,
That's
you all need
us.
to understand something. You all need to understand the agenda. What they're trying to do is they're trying to condition you to make you think that everything's okay and try to silence everybody else like myself. And that's why people are already going to say, oh, you're fear mongering. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh, no, the economy as well. No, I'm trying to prepare you for the economic collapse. I want you to be ready so that when things do happen, you will be ready. Your family will be ready. You all will have enough food to be ready.
This is a good
So, in
video.
short, store food and
He
water,
does a
buy
good
guns,
job
and
of
convert your cash to gold and
explaining
silver.
what's
Now, the
happening,
whole gold and silver thing,
as pointed
personally,
out by the shipping industry.
I'm not a fan of that, because I know when the economy collapses, everything's going to collapse with it. And really, the goods are going to come from what you stocked
I
in:
like that what she
food,
said.
toiletries, toilet paper, water. That's really going to become the new commodity. Trust me. And now I'm going to show you the Dow Jones as well, and then give you my little 2 cents on what you need to do. Here I am at the Economic Collapse blog, excuse me, by Michael Schneider again. He just posted this today. If you've been peeping game, the Dow fell another 364 points today, and now we're down
That was
2,200
January
points
13th.
from the peak of the market. That's a big drop, folks. This is no joke. And he goes on to talk about the economy and just how bad it is in relation. Now, I'm gonna leave a link for this article and for his website, because I think you need to see just how close we are. So, in short summary, what do you need to do? You need to start stocking up food, water now. Stock up on rice, stock up on pasta, stock up on beans, stock in bulk. Go to Sam's Club, Walmart, start stocking up on bulk foods so that you have enough. Canned foods
Spam in
is
a
a good
can.
one too. Really start stocking up now, because I'm
That lasts
telling
a
you
long
now,
time.
now that the ships have stopped coming in, and that, like this article says, there's literally no ships coming in, they're all empty, no ships are moving. That means no commerce is coming in, no food's coming in, nothing is coming in. And you know what that means? What comes after that is when the economy does collapse, just like I shared in my bail-in video. When the banks start to shut down, when the ATMs no longer work, well, now there are no cargo ships coming in, so now that means no food's coming in. So when all the grocery stores are out of food now, well, that's it. There's no more food. So you don't want to be trapped and caught in that mess, because I'm telling you now, when people can't get their food, when people can't get their water, there will be anarchy. And like I said, this is not meant to be fear mongering. This is not meant to spread fear. What I'm trying to do is prepare you, show you the warning signs, get the truth out there about our economy, so that you all may be well with you. You will prepare, you will get enough food and enough drinks and enough supplies for your family, and also toiletries like toilet paper, tissue, flashlights, matches, candles.
She's
You'll
doing
have
good.
enough
Yeah.
materials for you so that your family will survive the coming collapse, and you won't be like all the millions of sleeping Americans out there who aren't even prepared, or who don't even know what's going on, because they believe CNN, they believe Fox, and worst of all, they believe Obama. So I'm just going to leave that out there.
So I think that's about it
And
right there,
like I
brother.
said, my job is to bring you the truth.
Isn't this amazing though? We've been saying this for well over a year. I've been preparing my congregation for well over a year and keep telling them this. But most people, I mean like 90% of Americans, have no more than a 3-day supply of food in their whole house. People
Wow.
live from day to day.
Yeah.
They go to the supermarket after work. They pick up that bread, that milk, something for the night. And, it's back again in a day or two. They're going to do the same thing. But what will you do when there's no bread and milk to pick up for 2 weeks, and then you done used up all the food in your house? You got to go find food from somebody. Why not stock some up for yourself? It won't cost you but a little bit extra. Go do it today. Don't wait. My wife, listen, I showed this last night at the church, brother. My wife said, I'm going tomorrow. That's today.
Yeah.
She'll be off in a little while. She's going to Sam's. She's going to buy some dry goods. In other
Yep.
words, things that last.
Right.
You don't have to refrigerate them. You don't have to freeze them. You don't have to do anything. Just keep the bugs out of them.
Right.
And you're good to go. Let me tell you, beans and rice will go a long way and last a long time.
Right.
And that's better. And then spam. And it's a whole lot. You know what nothing feels like? It don't feel good.
No.
It don't feel good.
Well, we talk about the bad weather coming. They tell you got to have at least 3 days a supply without electricity. Can you go right now 3 days without leaving your home? Electricity, food, water, heat, whatever you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
No, nothing to go 3 days. And then I tell everybody it needs to be at least a week.
I tell them a month, but a week would be a bare
Exactly.
minimum.
That's the bare, not even 3 days, just do a week, because we saw that. Was it 2 years ago in February when the ice storm hit? I mean, it was terrible.
And here's what I think. The best way to prepare is you and your family going camping for a month, and you have nothing but the tent, and you got to supply everything else because you got a house. Most of you got a house.
Yeah.
So you keep the tent. Now, what do you need to camp for a whole month with no electricity and no gas, no anything? Have that on hand.
Hey, wait a minute. You ready for this here? Hey, is anybody in there?
Yeah.
Hey, we need some food out here.
Yeah, that's right.
Huh?
Yeah, can we sleep with you? We don't have any heat in our house.
Right.
It's freezing out here.
Please, aren't y'all Christians?
Yeah.
Won't y'all please help us? Huh? Hey, I'm going, and that's going to be something else.
It is, and it's going to happen.
Yeah.
When they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them as a woman in childbirth.
Right.
Brother, what did our president get up there and say? He got up there and plainly said it. Peace and safety, y'all. Don't worry. And those who are telling you something different don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
He run us down.
Yeah.
But he don't know. Nobody must have told him, or he was just lying.
Jonathan Kahn did at that prayer breakfast.
Yes, he did.
He told him, didn't he?
He did. But
Ben Carson did too.
People are saying it, but everybody wants to believe the best.
Right.
And this is the time that God is bringing the economic judgment against our nation, and we rightfully deserve it, y'all. We rightfully deserve what's coming.
Exactly. Well, what's going to happen is that when this does happen, and the bottom does fall out of the economy and what have you, it's ripe for martial law.
Exactly.
And they've been preparing for martial law.
This past summer they were doing.
Yeah, they prepare for trucks running up and down all the interstates at nighttime.
Yep.
And all
Jade Helm 15.
Mm-hmm. And that 15 is for 2015.
Yeah.
And they were practicing it through 2015, getting ready for this time. So, when we're talking about when it does happen, these things are ready to go.
Let's go back and talk about history.
Okay.
Let's go back and talk about where did this come from?
Right.
All right?
Right.
How did we get the current economic crisis?
Why are we so dependent on our dollar and all the stuff that's going on in the world? How our dollars exchange and all the stuff?
So let's go all the way back to right here on Georgia's soil. I mean, right across the river, you guys. Some of you listening are from Georgia and probably in Georgia right now. It all started on Jekyll Island. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
It started on Jekyll Island in the year 1910, but it really started before then, because history, and this is according to a video that we've watched, and what's this guy's name? Tim Bentz.
Yes.
His name is Tim Bentz. You can look him up. It's Jekyll Island, Indian skeletons, and Canaanite altars. You can find it. It's easy to find.
Now,
Listen to it.
It's about an hour video.
And this man was told by God to go to Jekyll Island, and he was going to show him some things. Didn't tell him what he was going to show him till he got there.
Right.
So the story I'm fixing to really condense for you guys is going to be.
But they got to watch this thing. If they don't, they're gonna miss it.
Yes, it's a wonderful video. They need to watch it. And but here's a condensed version. So God sends him to Jekyll Island right here in Georgia, where the current economic
07, 08.
It was 08, I think.
Okay. Right before this.
Right before
it was going to happen.
Big stock market crash of 08. All right, so he is sent by God there. He goes there, and he doesn't even know why he's there. But when he meets the check-in clerk at the hotel, she's asked him his name. She knows then who he is, and she's reserved a tour for him with the historian that he says was on the island.
Right.
And that was the next day. So he has his meal. He gets up the next day. He's taking a historical tour. And, of course, the historian tells him about Rockefellers and all the other people that were there making up the modern-day banking system.
Right.
They were making the plans. And we're going to have a clip here in just a minute. But I want to tell the story. And he says, well, what else happened on the island? I said, well, before, there were some Indians on this island. And they had some very unique culture right here on the island. And he says, what do you mean? He says, well, I got a painting I'll show you. So he shows him a painting that nobody else gets to see. Somehow it's locked in a room.
Right.
And so he shows Tim Bence this painting, and these Indians are tall. They're big. And they have what looks like a Canaanite altar, an altar of human sacrifice that you would see over in the Middle East. All right?
Not on this continent.
Not on this continent.
Right.
And Tim Bence is a Indian historian himself. He was from Arkansas, I believe.
Yeah, Oklahoma or Arkansas one.
That
He's
area.
out that way, yeah.
And he knew a lot about the Indians. He even had ideas and knew about the French when they tried to come and colonize Jekyll Island and that area.
There was a story about that.
And there's a story there. So he looks at the picture, and when he sees the picture, and we're talking about Tim Bence sees the picture right there on Jekyll Island, showed to him by the Jekyll Island historian.
Right.
He says, this doesn't look right with the native Indians across the rest of America. The altar looks like a Canaanite altar. Their bows look like really advanced recurve bows.
And they're supposed to not have none here.
And everything looked different to him. And so he began to question. He says, well, what about these Indians? What do you know? He says, well, we've got some skeletons of the Indians right here in the museum.
Yeah.
And he goes in and he pulls back a piece of plexiglass.
Right.
And he had the Indian skeletons, according to Tim Bence, were revealed.
Right.
And I'm going by Tim Bence. Now, I'm not telling
Right.
you I've seen any of this.
Right.
And that he said these skeletons look 8 to 8.5 feet tall. Well, I'm thinking to myself, if I knew who painted that painting, I might go do research on my own.
Right.
And I did. I
Yeah.
called. Now, I did this. I called the Hilton Head, and I got to talk to a historian, not the one that he talked to, but one that's there now.
You talked about Hilton Head
And,
or
excuse me, I said Hilton Head, didn't I? I just
Jekyll
came from a
Island.
vacation on Hilton Head, so that
Jekyll
was in my
Island.
mind. I was
Right.
on Jekyll Island. Thank you for catching that.
Okay.
Because my mind flipped back to just the other week when I was at Hilton Head.
Right.
I'm talking about Jekyll Island. So I called the Jekyll Island historian, and I was talking to her. And she said that there was some paintings that a French man named Jacques Lemon, I don't know if I said that right, but
That's
I
good
tried
enough.
it. Lemon. And I said, can you spell it? And she knew it. Boy, she spelled that thing right out. And I said, thank you so much. I thanked her for her time. We talked about the Indian artifacts. We talked about the things that I had heard Tim Bence mention. And I'm trying to make this short. So I got on the internet. I looked up some of his paintings. And guess what? There they are. There are some paintings of the Indians from the Timucus tribe. And that was the tribe that pretty much inhabited South in Florida and Georgia and some up into South Carolina, but not very far up into South Carolina. All right, and in these pictures now, in these drawings, not pictures, in these drawings in Le Mans, and this was in between 15, well, he was born in 1533 and he died in 1588. And this was sometime after 1490 when Christopher Columbus had discovered
this is
America.
the man who
This
painted
is the
the
artist.
painting.
This is the artist who's painted the paintings. These
Right.
are literal paintings that he did.
Right.
Now, in these paintings, he shows the Europeans coming. He shows them getting off of the boats in his paintings, and then he shows the natives. And all these natives have this weird way they tie their hair up. All the men tie their hair up on top of their head in a bun.
Uh-huh.
In a bun, brother. It looks weird.
Yeah.
But anyway,
bet.
I read in history. All right, I read on the history of the Indians then, and many of them said that they tied their hair up in a weird way on top of their head like a bun, and that's the way he painted them. So I'm already giving him credit now. The artist is already drawing things I found out from the history books.
Yep.
And guess what else?
What?
He drew some of the Indians at least 7 to 7.5 feet tall.
Get on down.
They would be standing beside the Europeans, brother, head and shoulders taller than the Europeans.
Yeah.
Now the Europeans, they were scrawny, all right.
Yeah.
They had on their what would you call it? Their breastplates and and these were Spaniards that
Yeah.
and
Helmets and all
helmets
that.
and all that. Yeah, and
Protective
these
gear.
were the French, I think. But anyway, he draws them like he sees them, and these Indians, boy, they are twice as wide.
Yeah.
They're 1.5 feet taller, and he draws these Indians, especially some of these Indians, like the chief, very muscular. I mean, he's cut like a bodybuilder. And then he'll have another.
Brother, someone that big couldn't stand in this room here.
I know it.
They couldn't stand up in this room. They couldn't get to the door.
We'd be scared of him.
Yeah, they'd be getting. I said, "Man, what is that? How big are you?"
Yeah.
And he'd push his head up through this ceiling right here.
So we talk about some big folks.
Yeah, I'm going. Come on now.
And these are in his drawings.
Yeah.
And when it talks about the Canaanite altar, and I didn't find a Canaanite altar. I listened closely to the description that he gave. I don't think I found that that painting that Limon had drew of the island there, Jekyll Island. But I found a lot under his name and the Indians it showed some of these Indians had cannibalistic ways. It showed them eating other people's arms and legs
Yeah.
that they'd killed in battle.
Really?
It did.
Yeah.
Showed them as being cannibals. But I said, well, I found the artist. He was right about that.
Yeah.
I found the giants, if you want to call them that. And so I said, let's give him some credit. Some of the things he's saying is right on track. So now let me tell you the rest of the story. These on the island, Indians had an altar, and it was said they sacrificed children on the altar.
Right.
All right, to whatever god. But when the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, when the banking industry that was running the world in the early 1900s, 1910, because they met on the island in 1910, when they came in, they built nice houses. Not really big, expensive ones because they were multimillionaires, but really nice stuff. And they built them over the meeting house. Now, each one built their houses wherever they wanted to, but the meeting house was built, it was, as told by the historian, to 10 bench over where the altar was. Over the altar. So listen, when they were making their plans for the banking system that runs the world today, they were making their plans over a Canaanite, style altar where the Indians made child sacrifice.
Wow.
So this is a demonically charged system.
So what we're looking at is that over the room, the atmosphere, we're all they're drawn to this thing here. And I know you're getting ready to tie this thing into a beast system here.
Yeah.
And just here for a little bit, but we know that the atmosphere is not right to be doing this in.
No.
This is not the place to be doing this. But yet they're drawn to Jekyll Island. And the name of Jekyll Island means?
Two-faced, good and evil. But you can't be both.
Right.
So the good is only a mask for you to accept it.
To evil.
And then the evil can turn.
Yeah.
Once you've let it in, once it becomes law, once it's taken over the nation's banking system, then the evil come out. What we're seeing is the evil of the banking system that is built on debt.
Yeah.
It is not built on
We're talking about economic collapse.
Yes.
We're talking about the collapse of our economic system. What was it built on?
Yes.
Where was it founded?
The foundations are corrupt.
Yeah.
And the foundations are corrupt, a just and holy God.
Now, we're not telling anybody anything that nobody else hasn't already known.
They know this.
They know. But now we're just putting it together on one show.
And telling you the history, where it started, how it started, and what was there on the very island before the banking system and its idea ever came. It came from a portal of hell.
Yeah. So now let me
and it's enslaved everybody.
Yeah, can I salt
Please
and pepper this for a moment?
Yep. I need a little flavor.
Yeah, so when we're talking about these 8.5 foot tall Indians. Now, because we talk about on this show here, it's end time revelations and what God has shown us about a lot of these different things about. We believe that, or a lot of people believe that these giants were in America or across the world were offspring
of the Nephilim. Yes.
And when we're talking about the giant in Genesis chapter 6, them coming down into the daughters of men and having children, and the children's offspring were called the Nephilims, and they had giants in the land. And throughout time in history, giants just didn't disappear.
That's right.
That they've continued to have children, all the way down to anywhere when they find these bones across the world where these giants are at, from Peru to the Middle East to America to Jekyll Island.
Yes.
That somewhere, somehow, when the Smithsonian Institute, did I say that right?
You got it right.
Smithsonian Institute gets involved, disappear.
The bones go away.
Disappear.
And I haven't just heard that from one source. I have heard it from many sources, and I know for a fact because I've seen the clippings. I didn't hold them myself, but I've seen them on the television of all across the Midwest, all across the United States of America. These bones have been uncovered, and they have been documented. They've been photographed, and then when the Smithsonian comes in, they disappear.
Exactly.
And so I'm not telling you anything new that there would be giants on the East Coast.
Right.
What I'm telling you is they were on the island, and on the island they had child sacrifice. On that island,
the
Nephilim. So you get a lot of things coming together.
Satanic.
So
entities.
Geographical, demonic activity.
Right.
All right. And now you got the rich people of the world, and you'll find out some more in a minute. We got to get that clip playing in just a minute.
Okay.
But you'll find out how much money was on this small island where all of this stuff took place, and the idea that came from the island that has enslaved the whole world.
Wow.
And we're part of it.
Yeah.
Our money system is part of it. So God in the book of Revelation judges the economies of the world, and it's called Babylon is fallen.
Okay.
And those who made all their money through it are standing back in utter chaos and destruction.
Wow.
All right, so let's play this clip, and this clip is going to tell you who was there.
About 9 minutes long.
It's about 9 minutes long. It's going to tell you the names of the people who came, the wealth that was there, and the purpose and what they founded and how it affects us today.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Let's see what we can do here.
Jekyll Island is a real island. It's off the coast of Georgia. And it was on that island back in 1910 that the Federal Reserve System was conceived at a highly secret meeting that took place there.
Over a Canaanite altar.
And what I'd like to do is talk about this meeting and show you that, in fact, the Federal Reserve was created there, and that there was a lot of secrecy surrounding it. And then we'll be confronted with the question, why the secrecy? When things are done in secret, there are often things to hide. And we'll explore what it was that they wanted to hide. In 1910, Jekyll Island was privately owned by a small group of millionaires. In those days, they were millionaires. In today's dollars, they would be billionaires.
Yeah.
From New York. This is where their families went to spend the winter months. It was a resort island, a resort club. It was called the Jekyll Island Club. And there was a very elaborate clubhouse there, which was the center of their social activities. This is where the Federal Reserve System was conceived, is in that clubhouse. So let's tell that story. It all began in November of 1910, when Senator Nelson Aldrich sent his private railroad car to the New Jersey Railroad Station, where there it was in readiness for the arrival of himself and 6 other men who were instructed to come under conditions of great secrecy. For example, they were told to come one at a time, not to be seen together, not to dine together on the night of their departure. If they had arrived at the same time, they were instructed to pretend as though they didn't even know each other. They were to avoid newspaper reporters, because these were well-known men, and had they been spotted by reporters, which often frequented the railroad station, especially had they been seen together, many questions would have been asked. Even after they got on board the railroad car, this pattern continued. They were told to use first names only, not to use last names. And 2 of the men adopted code names completely. The reason for that is that they were afraid that the servants on board the train would recognize who they were if they used their last names. And they knew that if word leaked out in that fashion and eventually found its way into the press, the whole purpose of the meeting would have been completely destroyed. So absolute secrecy was essential. Well, the train traveled for 2 nights and a day on a 1,000-mile journey to the south. And when they awoke on the second morning, the car was on the siding, the railroad siding at Brunswick, Georgia. And from there they took the ferry boat across the inland strait to Jekyll Island and to the clubhouse. And for the next 9 days, these men sat around a table and hammered out all the important details of what eventually became the Federal Reserve System. And incidentally, if you visit that clubhouse today, you can walk down to the end of the one corridor there, and on a door is a brass plaque. And it says, in this room, the Federal Reserve System was created. When they were done, they got back on board the train, back to New York, and disappeared. And for quite a few years after that, these men denied that any such meeting ever took place. It wasn't until after the Federal Reserve was firmly established that only then did they begin to talk openly about it. They wrote books on it. One of them wrote a magazine article, and they gave interviews to newspaper reporters. And so now, many years later, it's possible for us to go to the public record and find in print detailed descriptions of what happened at that meeting. Well, who were these men? The first one I've already mentioned, the one with the railroad car, Senator Nelson Aldrich, who was the Republican whip in the Senate. He was also chairman of the National Monetary Commission, which was that special committee of Congress which was created for the purpose of proposing legislation which was to reform banking. That was the idea. Banking needed reform. And the American people were greatly concerned in those days over things that were going on in the banking industry. People were losing their money in the banks because they weren't keeping their promises to hold their deposits in reserve. There were runs on the bank and the banks couldn't pay the people back. But most of all, they were concerned over the concentration of financial power that was in the hands of a small group of very powerful and large banks in New York on Wall Street. This is what they called the money trust. That was the name, and it was a very popular expression in the newspapers. And quite a few politicians were elected to office on their campaign promise to break the grip of the money trust. President Wilson was one of those politicians, by the way. So, that was the purpose of the National Monetary Commission, which was to propose legislation, which eventually became the Federal Reserve Act, to break the grip of the money trust over the financial markets of America. Aldrich was a business associate of J.P. Morgan. He was the father-in-law to John D. Rockefeller, Jr., which means, of course, that eventually he became the grandfather of Nelson Rockefeller, our former vice president. You remember his full name was Nelson Aldrich Rockefeller, so he derived his middle name from his famous grandfather. The second person at the meeting was Abraham Piatt Andrew, who was Assistant Secretary of the Treasury. He later became a congressman, but he was very prominent in banking circles. Frank Vanderlip was there. He was the president of the National City Bank of New York, which was the largest and the most powerful of all the banks in the country, representing the financial interests of William Rockefeller and the international investment firm of Kuhn, Loeb and Company. Henry Davison was there. He was the senior partner of the J.P. Morgan Company. Charles Norton was present. He was the president of the First National Bank of New York, which was another one of the giants. Also, there was Benjamin Strong, who was the head of J.P. Morgan's Bankers Trust Company. And incidentally, 3 years later, when the Federal Reserve System was finally created, he became the first head of the system. And finally, there was Paul Warburg, who was probably the most important of all the men there because of his knowledge of banking as it was practiced in Europe. Paul Warburg was born in Germany. He eventually became a naturalized American citizen. He was a partner in Kuhn, Loeb and Company. He was a representative of the Rothschild banking dynasty in England and France. And through all the years of his banking in America, he remained in very close contact with his brother, Max Warburg, who was the head of the Warburg Banking Consortium in Germany and the Netherlands. Paul Warburg was one of the wealthiest men in the world. Those are the 7 men who were on Jekyll Island, and as incredible as it may seem, they represented approximately 1/4 of the wealth of the entire world. And these are the men that sat around a table on Jekyll Island and created the Federal Reserve System. When I did my research on this topic, I came to the conclusion that the Federal Reserve System does not need to be audited. It needs to be abolished. I came to the conclusion that the Federal Reserve needed to be abolished for 7 reasons, actually, and I'd like to read them for you now. First of all, it is incapable of accomplishing its stated objectives. 2, it is a cartel operating against the public interest. 3, it is the supreme instrument of usury. 4, it generates our most unfair tax. 5, it encourages war. 6, it destabilizes the economy. And 7, it is an instrument of totalitarianism.
All right, so here we go. Now, Tim Bentz in 2008 is led by God
Yep.
to go to this place where this people right here got together, built this system. I mean, now they built it for their own corrupt purposes,
That's right.
obviously. So the rich could stay rich and the poor would stay poor, and they get all the interest off of the wealth that the rich could corporately put together in a bank. So let's just get past that. Tim Bentz sent there in 2008, and he goes into the very room where these guys put together their plan. And right in the center of that room.
Sent there by God.
By God, that's right.
Okay.
By God. And so he's standing in the middle of the room, and the historian is saying, you're standing right over the altar right here. And the historian said, I know that you're a man of God and a praying man. He says, I'm going to go over here in this other room and let you do some praying if you want to. So Tim Bentz stood there, and he began to pray. And he says Jesus appeared to him and told him, we're going to destroy this altar. And
Whoa. We're going to destroy this altar, which is tied to our banking system.
Yes.
That's been built over.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And so he stands there, and he says that the Lord Jesus makes it appear in front of him, the altar, and then he says Jesus kicks it from his side, and Tim says he kicks it from his side. And when they do that, there's what he called and described as a sonic boom.
Yeah.
And it shook the house, and the historian come running back in and said, what did you do? What did you do? What just happened? And he says, well, that was hard to describe to him, but yeah, in the spirit, he said, we just tore down this altar. And then the historian said, what does that mean? And he was saying that means God's judgment has come upon the financial system.
In America.
And about 2 weeks later, we had the great fall of 2008.
Exactly. It fell 777.
One day's biggest drop ever in the stock market.
And they stopped it. They said, if we didn't stop this,
yes,
it'd go down to nothing.
But what they did is they stopped something that would have been good. It would have been better, I think, for it to bottom out and judgment come that day, because now we built it back up bigger on more debt.
Right.
Now there's like triple the debt that there was then.
Yeah.
Listen to what I'm saying. So it's triple the size now. So when it falls, it's going to hurt worse. It's higher.
Right.
And so that's the whole premises of
now,
our
7 years later.
Yeah, the whole premise
end of the Shemitah year again.
Yes, and the beginning of the Jubilee.
Yeah.
And God is not going to give us any strength to pick it back up. It's going to fall. I believe this. I believe it's going to collapse.
Yeah, has to.
Can't put a date on it, but I believe it's going to start this year. I don't know how far it's going to drop this year, but I do believe. Now, this is just my personal, I haven't had a divine revelation, but I do believe this.
Well, the purpose of the, go ahead, I'll let you finish.
Obama will stay in office.
Yeah, well, the divine revelations, and that's why we do this show, is a special edition of end time revelations. And we talk about what God has shown to the body of Christ through the prophets and through the different things that are out there. And we say, okay, is this possible to even happen? It looks to me like it's very possible.
Yeah, it looks to me like it's happening.
That this could happen.
And so our program today gave them a history.
You're right.
It's a history lesson. It's history all the way back to the Indians.
Right.
In the 1500s. And then you bring that all the way back to 1910, when the foundation of our financial system across the world and in America has been brought to bear from that point. And now you bring it to today. Judgment is here.
Let me share scripture with everybody. And you alluded to it when we began here, just to get scripture into this program here. 1 Thessalonians 5 in verse 1 says, but of the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write unto you, for yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. I believe Jesus is coming any moment.
Yep.
For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But ye, brethren, that's Christian, but you, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. Ye are the children of light and the children of the day, and are not of the night nor of darkness. Therefore let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober.
Amen.
That's good.
So here's the wake-up call.
Yeah.
We're a Christian radio, and we believe probably most of our listeners are Christian.
Yeah.
And you need to know.
Right.
And it's not just us. We have a broad ear, very big ears.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not an elephant, but I've got big ears.
I got elephants.
And you love elephants.
I love elephants.
And you got big ears. We're listening.
Mm-hmm.
We're listening to the prophetic voice, because a lot of people are connected to a lot of pastors through the radio.
Right.
All right, so we're listening to the prophetic voice across the land. You can hear it on TV. You can watch it on YouTube. You just choose your channel, and you're going to hear something about God judging America, and it's going to be financial, and it's going to be natural disasters. It's going to be man-made disasters. It's going to be disasters from the sky, disasters from the sea, disasters across the land.
Right.
And I believe, and history bears this out in the Old Testament, the way that God starts a judgment is in the financial sector.
Yeah.
It always starts on, and that's the warnings, because that's the least painful.
Right.
Is the finances. And the next, he takes your food.
Yep.
And the next, he brings in the enemy.
Yep.
And then he takes your land, and then the devil takes you into bondage.
Yeah, I think about the cities that were under siege in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Where, they were under siege for a long time. No food getting in and out. Couldn't eat anything. Couldn't burn no heat.
Yeah.
Cold. I mean, they were starving to death, and it's pretty bad.
So we want our Christian friends, we want everybody to be ready, but our Christian friends who listen to the radio today and you get a rebroadcast later, listen, please, if you got money, go buy you a little bit of spare food. Take care as much as you can, and prepare, because others will need it. You will need it. And the worst thing that would happen is you'd have a little extra, and you can always eat it later.
Here, I remember what someone was saying about in Germany when they were talking about what Hitler was going to do in Germany and all those things. And the pastor stood in the pulpit and said, "It's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. It's going to be all right.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. It's going to be all right." And even in revolutions before that time, pastors would stand and say, "It's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." But when all hell broke loose in those cities, in those countries and all, then they held those pastors responsible. Why didn't you tell us?
Yes.
Why didn't you tell us that this was around the corner? They had other pastors saying this, but you didn't say it. There were other pastors who was ringing the bell, but you didn't say it.
Amen.
And I don't want to be one like that. I want to say, listen, if we see the sword come upon the land, it's coming. We stand on the wall, we do it, we deliver ourselves.
Amen. And we're not crying wolf.
No.
We have got evidence, and that's why we treated you with that Baltic Dry Index.
BDI.
Yeah, BDI. We wanted you to see it, understand it, and you can do your own research. Please, just don't take our word for it. You'd be crazy to take our word for it.
Our financial system was built on over a Canaanite altar, sacrificing children over it. In the room. That's where it was at, in the room. You got to think about, if you really believe in demons and demonic influence and all the stuff, and you got to realize the devil, the Nephilim, your mind has to wrap around this here. It's pretty, go ahead, Steve.
Held in secret.
Held in secret.
Changed their names. Listen, hid it from the public for years until it was established. That's all demonic.
Yeah.
What hides in the dark and doesn't want to be found out until it's got a grip in your life is demonic, brother.
That's right.
And that's what's running the system. You know what? We're out of time. What happened?
An hour just flew right by this thing, didn't it?
I don't know.
We didn't get nobody to open phone calls or anything. We'll have to do it next time.
We'll have to try it next time.
That's right. Well, I'm going to let you say your goodbyes, and I'll do my little bit here.
Wow. So we love you. Listening audience, we want you to know, Brother Schaefer and I love you. Jesus loves you. He wants you not to be caught by surprise. We're sounding an alarm, so you will be prepared. And please don't ignore the alarm.
Don't play church. This is no time to be playing church. Pastors, you need to, like we're talked about what's getting ready to happen on the end times. I stood up at my church and said, y'all, I don't say a whole lot about this here, but I'm telling you what, bad times are coming, and you need to be prepared. You need to have a plan in the event where you're separated from your families. Where are you going to go? What you going to do? How are you going to get together? There needs to be an emergency plan set together so that you know when the communications are cut off, this is what we're going to do. And I had a man come up and shake my hand and say, "Thank you, Pastor, for telling us." Thank you. And they already knew it, but nobody was saying it. So that's all.
God bless you. I'll see you in the rapture.
God bless you, Brother Steve. Well, I've been your host. Steve's been your host. And thank you so much for another episode, a special edition, End Time Revelations. I've been your host, Henry Schaefer. God bless you as you continue to serve the Lord Jesus Christ. Thank you for tuning in today. We've been your host, Henry Schaefer and Steve Hall. The end times are here. Anything is possible. Are you ready? Don't miss the next episode of Special Edition, End Time Revelation.